and everything. It cleared out all of the vegetation. It cleared out all of the fish habitat. It made the water perfect. It was no longer warm. It was cool like it should be. So one of the things that if the counties, and I've been on planning commissions and with councils, if the county and the cities would get out of God's way and allow Him to take care of the nature as He saw fit, it will be just like you want it.
Thank you for that comment.
I'm not concerned with temperature because it's not a problem. You're making it a problem, and it is not a problem.
All right. Other questions that will help people understand the code, and then we're going to, in just a couple minutes, we need to move into focused input. So,
that we can't address tonight. I want to remind folks that you can write on the comment sheets, and we take all those as public record and public comment. But if you don't want to write on those, then we can capture them. But we have time for a couple more before we move on. Folks who raise their hand, where did they come? I think you've had your hand up for a while.
I had some multiple things I wrote down that you may or may not be able to answer, but one of them was, I noticed in your presentation that you said that the system potential was done by studying things going all the way back to 1850. Well, I find that interesting because I'd like to know how you fast forward. The comment in reference to Goal 5, I don't know that a lot of these folks understand exactly where Goal 5 is coming from, and I think that should be explained clearly as to what Goal 5 is, and I'm not going to go into it because I would rather hear it from you to tell them the truth what Goal 5 is. And the other thing is, where are the baseline studies? What was studied? Were there chemicals studied? Are there particulates studied? Is there how long ago? How often? Have you checked septic tanks? Have you been looking for whether it be chemicals or and are they available? Who did them? Who paid for them?
I think that was more questions than I could comprehend.
But
I'm gonna hit on it. I'm gonna hit on two real quick.
There's a point though. The
I know.
point is that if you want these folks to pay for variances in an effort to try and use their own property and tax them indirectly by telling them it's going to cost them money to use their own property, they darn well ought to know where these restrictions are coming from, who's behind them, who's paid for the research, and what's the methodology behind it.
Okay, so I think the issue always is when people come to the project at different stages. So obviously you came in earlier than a lot of folks, and some folks want to read and dig into it more and give me a call and we can talk about it more.
No, it should be public.
Oh, it is public, and it's some of this is easy to explain, some of it isn't. But to hit on your main point, Goal 5 is one of the now 14, 15 statewide planning goals that applies here, and in that goal, we have to meet that through our comprehensive plan. And I mentioned on one of those slides, one of the goals was to inventory and then create a program to protect the resources. Usually that results in some proposed code.
But there's a rationale behind the so-called statewide comprehensive plan.
Right.
Goal
So
5, and that's what I want to hear you say it.
Right. So that goal specifically is for improving natural resources, which is the one that applies here. That deals with riparian areas and wetlands. And there's a process laid out on how to inventory that, and we follow that.
And the process was created by whom?
It's spelled out, as Greg mentioned, in administrative rules. So
By
I think
whom? By whom?
by the state, of Oregon.
And they got their information and walking and direction orders from who?
I think your elected officials have some say, and the agencies do.
No.
We can have a disagreement on that, but
Now, see, you're not giving direct answers to direct questions.
But so it came from the state of Oregon.
I'm trying.
And we were not involved in the development of Goal 5, so we can't really talk about it. So we need to apologize, but we promised folks that we would also shift into discussion of the options. I think we need to do that. If you have questions that are going unanswered, we would be happy to hear from you. Just one second, to finish the sentence now. So if you have questions that don't get answered, we'll be around afterwards. You can contact us through this information. But we're going to shift and circulate something real quick.
Well, people can't direct the options until they actually know the facts. And I'm just explaining this because this is critical. I'm going to praise them. And you guys are burying these people in zones, variances, codes, and other things on purpose. And I'm going to give you an example of it, just so you'll know really quickly.
Right.
Your North Corvallis MPH well 1 was rated at a 98 versus 100 water quality standard in 2008. Your Vineyard Mountain water was 97% of quality. It's outstanding. That was in 2008. The City of Corvallis' wells are running at 90% outstanding, and this is by the Environmental Working Group. You guys are putting something in place that is coming from another agency that has no bearing on these people's rights to their property. And it's critical that you get down to where they are. They own you. You don't own them. And you must give them all the information and then go to your codes and variances, because otherwise they have no idea what to do.
So
You have no
thank you.
way to help them in your process until you have furnished them the information that they require from you.
I hear you. And we have been.
And
we have been.
she needs to write down the complaints they have, not just the good things that she gets out of you, because this is not a consensus meeting.
Right, this is an
Clear?
input meeting, absolutely.
This
This
is not a
input meeting.
consensus
So,
meeting.
so let me address.
So maybe you just need to keep going with these people until you get their questions answered, instead of trying to get zoning and code, which is irrelevant, until they have the facts.
Okay, I hear you, and the difficulty is that people are at different points with this process. There are a number of people in this room who have been involved
Yeah, but
for months.
you got good scientists in here who are telling you things, and you're
Yes,
ignoring
and we're
all
not
of them.
ignoring that, no, sir.
Well, yes,
And-
you are. Because
no.
otherwise, option
Okay, and
zero.
we're not going to do shouting now. So,
Zero needs to be your option.
okay, so, I want to take a poll of how many people would like to move into giving focused input, or first, and then the second question would be how many people would prefer to continue with us answering questions. So, first, how many people would like to move into focused input on the code that we have handed out? Raise your hand. Okay, 2 people. So, how many people would prefer to continue with questions? Okay, so, I apologize to those people who came expecting to do focused input.
There's only 2 people. Why don't you take the 2 questions?
Why don't you find out?
Great questions.
So there's only 2 people held up their hand on the first question.
Are they-
Why don't you take
Are they
theirs?
state employees, town employees, city employees? Who are they?
We can ask everybody to introduce themselves. Why don't we do that? Okay, so let's do that. We had